So here's kind of how I think about Claude. So Claude, there's a bunch of different ways that you can interact with it. The primary one is chat, which is something like this, where you have it open in a browser and you can ask your questions here, and then all of your previous chats are saved into the feed there. The other way is the app, which is what you download on your computer, and basically it's that exact same app, just open its separate window on your computer. Code is where things get more interesting. Chat on the browser has a code section. Same with the app; it also has a code section, and this is where it will actually create and spit out code. There's another way to interact with that, which is through the terminal, which I'll show in just a sec after I get through this. And then the extension is just the Chrome extension up here, which you can pull up on any page on the internet. And it's super helpful to scrape the page or kind of take details down of the page. Then there's the terminal window, which I'll talk about, I think, last probably. It's the most powerful version, in my opinion, of using Claude. And then there are also other tools like Cursor and VS Code, which are made for coders that are really helpful for other things as well. So I'll get into those. So most of these make sense to most people. Chat on the internet browser or on the app is very simple. It's an LLM. You can go back and forth. You can have conversations with it. It will do a lot of things that you want it to do. The extension is specifically useful for looking at websites and having it look at websites. That a lot of the times what I'll do is if I need context from a specific website, but I can't get my terminal session or my app session onto that website, I will ask for a prompt to digest that website, give that to the browser extension, and then come back with whatever that output is. So a lot of what we're going to be talking about and thinking about is, how do I get Claude to prompt Claude? And what that means is, I want a specific output from something. Can I ask Claude what the best way to prompt itself is for that? So a lot of the times I'm asking Claude to ask me questions to get clarity. And one of the ways that I like saying this is ask me as many questions as you need to get this right. This is super useful. There is another way of doing this. There is a /grill me skill on GitHub that's out there that's super useful, but I will talk about that in a little. So the terminal window is by far the most powerful and most interesting way to use Claude, in my opinion. And so what that looks like is if we go to the desktop, I have a new terminal window up here for Mac. You can do Command Space to bring up my computer's going a little slow. To bring up the spotlight, you can type in terminal. Just give it a second. And you can open it through here. And this is just like, getting into the behind the scenes of the computer. So I can close out of that. So this is logged in on my terminal, and ls, you can see what it has access to, and basically these are all the files on your computer. CD is how to get into one. So I have it set up so everything that I run with Claude is in this file path. And the reason this is important is you can have different file paths, you can have different projects that all have different context. So if I go here and I create, oh no, not a new window. Nope, hold on, terminate. Here, Finder, new window. And I go to my computer. You can see, do this. You can see here this is just all the folders on my computer that you would see in any list view. We can zoom out. And in projects, I have all of these different set flight projects. And this is where all the files live that Claude can access to do the work that I want it to do. And so basically by saying CD project set flight, I'm just getting this terminal window into this specific folder over here. Once you have Claude set up, you can just say Claude, and Claude will launch in this terminal window, specifically in this folder. And so why that's really useful is you can have different folders for different projects. So say SetFlight is one of my projects. I have other like personal projects that I want to do. I can just create a new folder here and title it, whatever the new project is, and I can have Claude reference that folder. And what's really useful about this is now Claude has access to all of the files that are in this folder. So it's got an agents.md file, claude.md file. It has all of these, code files. And I didn't create any of these, the README file migrations. I didn't create any of these. Claude will create them on its own. So once, setup basically is create a new folder, have Claude go into that folder, set itself up. It'll take anywhere between, 10 to 20 minutes, depending on what you want it to do. Again, it's useful to give it context on what that folder is going to be used for. And then it will go ahead and start creating a lot of the documents that are needed to operate out of that. And so why this is useful is specifically from like a coding perspective, you can connect this and you can connect your folders. You can give this session of Claude access to GitHub to push code and make things live. You can also give it access to Vercel for hosting or Supabase for databases. So you can connect your version of code, which is also done, if I can open Claude, the app, I can show you all of the connectors that are available. And so a lot of what you can accomplish is based on the connectors that you can port in using the app. And most of these are kind of ubiquitous for the AIs that are out there. So I'm specifically using Claude, but you can do a lot of this. So in the app, you can go through and say settings, and you can see all of the connectors down here at the bottom. So you can see everything that my Claude is connected to. And with these connections, it's able to actually go in and make edits and see all of the data that's coming out of all of these apps. And then I can then, reference that in these chats as they go. So that's the like terminal side of things. That's really useful for coding, for working with like any sort of file folder directories on your computer. The other one that's specifically really useful for notes is tools like VS Code or Cursor. I personally prefer VS Code just because that's what I started with, but I know Cursor has the same capabilities. And what that looks like is, this is VS Code. Let's open that up. I don't need this anymore. And I'll also show Obsidian, which I like. So if we're talking about notes, it's easy to move notes around if they are markdown files, which are just text files. So think of it like having just a local version of like your Google Drive, where all of your files are stored in one folder in one format so that anything can interact with them. That's why Obsidian here is really useful, because Obsidian is specifically a markdown editor. And so when you're setting up Obsidian, you can point that app at a specific file path, and it will allow you to create any of the markdown files, again, text files that are in that folder or file directory. And Obsidian specifically is really, really cool because you can create connections between those files. And it'll take a second to load, but once it does, I'll show you what that means. So you can tag connections between two specific files or between like an overarching topic. And what that does is it looks like this. And so it will create kind of a neural net of all of the files that you have and how they relate to each other as you continue to add more and more information to this. And the reason that this is really helpful is not only is it really cool to be able to see like, oh, okay, these are all the things that relate to each other. Here's all the lectures. You can kind of pull them around. This is really interactive and fun. You can see all the notes that I have on the side. So you can have different areas of knowledge, how they relate to whatever the central core topic is that you're interested in. You can have, a lot of different spokes around you as the individual. And the reason that this is really useful is when AI comes in and starts looking at these, it knows that it can follow any of these lines to more relevant data and chase down additional context as needed. And so having something like this, having a knowledge base or repository like this, not only is it helpful because I can look at it as a human going through and finding all these things, and that's why I like Obsidian, is because it's a good visual representation of how this works. In reality, when you're using this stuff, and this is also, it's a really nice just text editor to begin with. So for example, like if we go to this, just open some random folder, it will hopefully load in all my stuff. I hope this isn't empty. I don't think it is. Maybe. No. Please don't be empty. That'd be very sad. There we go. So it will load in, basically you have H1, H2s, H3s, and the ability to indent and add stuff. And so you can see that it is now linked to other, notes in that series. So this is a really great way to visualize things and to see kind of the visual connection of how all the information that you have is relating to each other. VS Code, on the other hand, is a great way to use that. So you have the exact same file folder, right? So for example, that thing that I was looking at, and because it's a text file, all of these applications can work simultaneously. I personally don't like editing text in VS Code very much. Like visually, to me, I just don't like it. I would much rather, if I'm typing something myself, I would much rather have it open in Obsidian. And you wouldn't have these two open at the same time because they're editing the same folder at the same time, which can lead to some saving issues. But what's really useful about this is, say, I remember I took notes on something. I know that it's in my meeting notes, but I don't know what day it was. I can then open Claude in this whole folder system in another window, if my computer would load. And I can tell Claude to go look for the thing that I am looking for. And it will read through all the documents, which is not very expensive in terms of like token or usage. It's pretty quick because they're all text files. They don't take up a whole lot of memory. It will go through and look at everything that's in here. Or if I say specifically, I know that it's in meeting notes, it will go through just all of the meeting notes and compile things. And because it has those connections, it's able to do that really quickly. And so VS Code specifically is a great way to have your file folder on one side, your notes in the middle, and then your AI open as well, so you can kind of have this shared workflow. Obsidian is specifically when you're working on things, it's just you and the information, you and the text. When you want to bring in an additional kind of AI level to it, LLM level to it, something like VS Code, Cursor, alternatively. And Obsidian is free, V is free. Claude is a free version, so you can kind of set all of this up. And then in terms of setting it up, just add Claude to explain it to you. Just say, I would like to use, these tools in this capacity, and it will help. So asterisks on here, I'm just going to put, if I can spell, Obsidian, because it's not a AI specific tool, but also super useful. So that's the general layout of how things work and how things are organized. You can also get much fancier, you can get much more simple, but that's how I like to use it. That's what makes sense to me. And again, if you have any questions about how stuff works, ask Claude. It will explain it to you. It will break it down step by step. If it's going too fast, tell it to slow down. It's an incredible teacher. And so have it prompt itself. This is very, very important. And, anytime you don't know how to do something, or it's, you need assistance, just tell it to help itself. And this having it ask you, right, is also super, super useful. Hope that helps.